This podcast is intended for educational purposes only. For our full disclosure, please visit us at nc-midwifery.com and our podcast page.
I forgot about that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. They were underneath the sheet you would put on top of the bed for the birth. You're like, where are my sheets?
And everybody else was like, that's disgusting.
You didn't birth on the bed. They were clean sheets.
Why are you still sleeping on those sheets? Oh my goodness.
I don't think you got out of bed for days. Only you. Found your sheets.
You're live.
All right.
Oh, that's good.
We better tell them
That's
the
a
rest
good
of the
story.
story. We're back. Part 2 of Angie's birth story with baby Peanut.
Yes.
So we've called 911. They've come to get her.
My baby is gone. My baby has
They
exited.
stuffed her in a car seat,
Yeah.
took her off to the hospital. Then what happened?
So then it was just kind of a normal postpartum experience for the next half hour or so. We just got me stabilized and reassured me that I was
She
in
didn't
fact
bleed to
going
death.
to live.
By the way, you only lost 250 cc's.
Right. Like
That
I
was
was
a
in
great birth.
phenomenal shape. I was in great shape. And then, we were just sitting on the bed together, Johnny and I, and
Waiting for updates
waiting
from
f-
Grandma
yes,
and Sierra, who
getting
was
text
at the hospital.
updates from the hospital and just trying to take it in that there is a problem here. We don't know what it is, but my baby is gone right now. And Shannon was just cleaning up and doing her cleaning thing. And
I
then
clean when I'm stressed.
I should have
do.
known.
Ask my husband.
I should have known.
He's like, what's bothering you?
But she finally worked up the courage to say to us, and she said, guys, I just need to let you know that I think your baby has some markers for Down syndrome. And she said, the next thing she said was, I hope I'm wrong, but I just need to let you know that that's what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. And I remember Johnny and I both just sat there for a second and then turned and looked at each other. And it was just this complete moment of silence.
Did that thought come back to your head at that point when you had thought, she's funny looking?
No. Well, no, not at all. And, this was such a learning experience, not just for life and as a parent, but as a midwife. Because, again, I think as a midwife, if that had been the birth I was doing, I wouldn't have caught that because it's not something I'm familiar with. And
But
so
remember, as a midwife, doing low-risk home birth with low-risk moms, healthy babies, we are so trained to know what's normal and what looks normal, acts normal, appears normal, that when we
Right.
see something that's outside that realm, we do notice it.
right. Yeah.
You would have noticed.
I'm sure I think I would have taken the same actions that you took as far as like getting baby on oxygen, that sort of thing. But I just wouldn't have known, right? The way that you knew right when she came out.
The scary thing for me, I guess, was because you don't know what's going on internally, and we had not had a fetal anatomy scan. You didn't want to have one of those. We did have the later scan, but at that point, baby's so curled up in a ball and packed tight in there, the markers aren't as obvious.
Right.
And they weren't looking for that. They were checking amniotic fluid levels
Right.
and breathing motions and all of those things.
Right. So this was a complete surprise diagnosis, unexpected.
And you are not even, you're not at risk. I mean, your age wasn't a great risk factor. There wasn't family history.
Right.
And the fact that she weighed 10.9 and she was late.
Yeah.
Most babies with Downs come early. They don't have like a great birth weight.
Right. And
Angie breaks all the rules.
just in God's providence, we didn't think about this until later, but we always say, Shannon and I always say, as champions of letting birth take its course, that babies know when they need to come. The baby knows, the body knows. And
if she had not grown as long as she had, she would have been in worse shape.
she would have been in really scary shape. So
If
it
she'd
was
have come
like
early.
she needed that time. She needed those 43 weeks to do as well as she did. So that's just incredible. I think that it happened that way. And so, you know, this was just a complete like universe altering moment for me.
Right.
And part of that is because I had like almost zero experience with Down syndrome. We don't know anybody. There's no one in our family. I just had this vague impression in my mind that, and what the funny thing is the vague impression that I had was completely false. So it was like my earth just fell apart.
What were you thinking?
I mean,
What were you anticipating?
I was like, is this even compatible with life? Is this going to be like,
are we going to have heart surgeries? Are we?
I was like, I thought, you know, this baby is going to be like very, very dependent on us. Like, I just didn't know. I was kind of thinking worst case scenarios because I had no idea. And I debated sharing this or not, and I'm going to, just because I hope that it will help somebody else out there that faces, you know, an unexpected outcome or diagnosis or something. But there was, I'm going to say, about 10 seconds that passed where, as this news is sinking in and as I'm very early postpartum and everything is turned upside down, that I thought, well, maybe it's better this way, that she's not doing well, because it's going to be better for everybody. Maybe that's why she's not going to make it, because that's, you know, what's supposed to happen.
You were very detached. It's like you weren't emotionally able to connect for a while, because I think you were just afraid so crazy of the outcome.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was so surreal. So I'm just saying, like, as a true confession, true story, that there was that brief moment.
So what emotion?
And I will
it?
say it passed quickly. Well, it was just this sad resignation of like, but also in a weird way trying to comfort myself. Well, because we had no idea at this point whether she was going to live or die. And so it was like this moment of, well, if she doesn't make it, maybe that's better for everybody, because her life is going to be so difficult, you know? And so that was my 10-second thought. It quickly passed, and the maternal instinct started setting in of, this is my baby. Like, we have to fight for her life.
And I need to be with my baby.
I need to be with her. Yeah. And so, it was just a whirlwind moment. None of us had any idea what was going to happen. And, one of the things that was such a blessing, such a providence, was, we know a friend, that works at the NICU, and, she's a mom. And I, you know, when my brain started kind of clicking back into gear, I thought, you know, Johnny, we should call this person, because she was probably going to have some insight for us. I mean, the NICU is like a completely new thing for me.
Well, and we know that you already have a real aversion to hospitals and some really bad experiences.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a little bit of fear there and anxiety about that.
Yep. And so you know, honest to goodness, this person calls on the phone like 2 minutes later after I said that. And she wasn't supposed to work that day, but she just happened to get called in to fill in for somebody else. And so she was there to receive our baby into the NICU. Awesome. And it just was a balm. It just was a little piece of comfort in the middle of this situation, that someone was there praying over her. Somebody was there that we knew to have that personal touch. So that was really neat.
Well, and this still was during the COVID era, where they were limiting how many guests could be there. I mean, what was it? A total of 3 people during the whole experience were allowed in and out.
So it was only 2 outside of parents.
Right. So you had to choose carefully.
Yep.
And Grandma was already there, so obviously she was one
She
of them.
counted as one.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, and so we had to call our kids onto the bed and share this news with them, and we had no clue what we were getting into. It's amazing how little we knew.
I think it was hardest on your oldest.
Oh yeah, she was devastated that the baby was gone, and we didn't know what was going to happen to her little sister. It was really rough.
So did they ask questions just about what all this meant at the time? Do you remember?
Yeah, they did. They were like, we told them that, she had this diagnosis of Down syndrome. We were pretty sure. And we said, we told them, we were like, we don't know what this means.
Well, and they hadn't been able to actually test at the hospital, but just by looking and,
and the
symptoms.
fact that she was having breathing issues, which was probably related to the heart.
And then they intubated her and sedated her right away, correct?
Not right away, but eventually.
Yeah.
But so, we gathered our kids and told them, and we said, we don't know what this means, but this is the baby that God gave us, and we're going to love her. We're going to pray for her. We're going to fight for her life. And so they just took it in stride and let it sink in. And
they've been awesome.
They've been awesome. And I do want to say that, there would not have been a different outcome for her had she been born in the hospital. There's nothing different that could have happened, because and
I've had to work through that too.
When she got to the hospital, she was stable. They had her on oxygen, but she wasn't on any other support. It wasn't until, I don't know the exact time frame, half hour later. It wasn't until later that she kind of crashed, and they did end up intubating her. But
you're right.
Nothing else would have happened.
Having been born at home was not a cause of it. It wasn't the reason for it.
Right.
It wasn't, other than having to take a ride in the ambulance at such a tiny little age.
Right.
But yeah.
But even that, the way that could have been avoided,
I know, I almost
and
wonder
now
if we should have just taken her,
I
didn't know at that point what all was going on inside.
Right. And, it's crazy because at this point, Sierra texted me a couple pictures, and here's this baby that was supposed to be snuggling with us at home. And here she is across town in a, plastic cubicle with tubes connected to stuff. She had eye ointment in her eyes, so her eyes were all goopy. Her face is still puffy from the birth. And it was just this weirdest moment looking at these pictures saying, like, that's not my baby. That's not my baby. Like, that can't be my baby.
Yeah.
It was just so weird. So fast forward, we struggled on through the day. I was not really in any shape yet to get up and go that night. So we got some sleep. And Johnny went the next morning to see her.
So was your mom with her
She was just with her for a couple hours, I think, until they got her in a room and settled. And then she came back. So sweet. I just, also having this news, like with her diagnosis, we didn't broadcast her birth. It was this, and this is really common, I think, because I've read like dozens, if not 100, Down syndrome birth stories now. But it's just like, do we tell people? Like, are they going to be happy? Are they going to celebrate? Or is it like, do we not tell people? And I remember my mom came home from the hospital with a bouquet of flowers and a balloon, just like she would have at any of our other births. And it just was like, just touched me, because I was just, could make me cry thinking about it, that she's celebrating. Happy. She was welcoming this baby. And I texted some friends of ours that we knew from years ago in Minneapolis, dear family, and I knew that I needed to choose carefully the first people that I told about this. And they texted back right away. And, here I am just like laying my heart on the line. Like, we had this baby. She has Down syndrome. And they texted back and said, I hope you know that you won the lottery. And we are so thrilled for you. And I just was like, exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. And
and God knew that she needed your family because he knew that you would fight for her.
yeah, and now I know that it's true. But at the time I just received it. It was like, wow, thank you, for celebrating this birth with us. So the next day I got myself to the hospital. It was, again, just every step was so hard and so surreal because this was not the experience that we had planned. It was nothing like I've ever experienced before. And I'm in rough shape. I'm still recovering. I should not have been up and moving around. And every parent that's had a baby in this type of situation knows that this is just what you do, but it's not ideal. And it was the COVID era. And so we had to completely gown up from top to bottom, gloves. So here I am reuniting with my baby for the first time since the birth, and I can't hold her. I can just barely touch her. She was in, I forget what it's called, low stimulation environment, to keep them calm and quiet and not let their breathing revert back
now,
to
had
womb.
they done testing at that point, done a heart scan and all the different things?
Oh, yeah, I think they had done some things, but I don't think anything was conclusive yet. And you don't get a genetic test back for
it takes a
weeks.
long time.
But everyone just assumed and kind of knew from the look and the way the lungs are shaped and everything that that she had Down syndrome.
So what are, obviously those things, what are some of the telltale signs then for people out there that are just curious about what you see?
Well, the first thing you notice is a little bit of a flatter face, chubby hands with short fingers, and we all typically have 3 lines or creases in the palm of our hand, and a baby with Down usually just has the 1 crease.
We should tell people just so
Ears
they know.
lower than the eyes, so our ears, how the top of Angie's ear, turn around a minute.
Yeah.
See?
Level with her eyes.
Is up here, but you might see the top of the ear down here.
The lower set.
And small ears.
And also the thicker neck.
Kind of a chubby, fatty roll across the back of the neck. Poor tone.
Yeah, floppier.
So you can actually almost tell
Barrel-chested
without the
a little
genetic
bit.
test, but you don't know what.
There's physical signs, but it's not confirmed until they get the genetic testing back. Because there's other things that can have some of the same looking symptoms.
And I should have written this down more clearly for our audience, but just for anybody out there that doesn't know, Down syndrome is trisomy 21. It's the most common form of genetic quirk out there. It's a 3rd copy of the 21st chromosome. And it produces just kind of these physical traits that you can spot and look kind of similar. And then there's often heart defects that go along with that.
We had another Downs baby several years back, and he actually had to have heart surgery right away.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, and we're so blessed. It was just a kindness to us in our scenario that she didn't have to have any surgery, but was definitely having some heart problems. So anyways, I go in to see my baby. She's in this low stimulation environment, and I have gloves on, and I can't touch her. I just can barely just put my finger on her. And
Wow.
so
and you're a skin to skin forever.
Yes, I'm
mama.
Babies go skin to skin. They don't ever separate from their mothers, and it was rough. And still just such an interesting moment going in to meet this baby that feels almost like not my baby. And she's just hooked up to a ton of stuff. Her head is all squished.
Probably like an out of body experience almost.
It's really strange. It was strange. Yeah. And, just looking at her, it still doesn't feel like my baby. And because she did look different with the Down syndrome, just she didn't look like my other babies. And so it just was this wow, trying to form this connection. But over the days, we went and visited, over the next couple of days, visited every day. And with each passing day, of course, that maternal bond is kicking in. And especially when she started doing worse medically, we just started fighting for her life. We were praying, We texted everyone that we knew under the sun
We're
to
all
be praying.
praying.
She had an army of prayer warriors behind her. And a couple days in, they called us at home at night and said she has maxed out on her support that we can give her here. And we're calling the life flight to send her to Spokane. And it was just like, oh my goodness, I'm still early postpartum. I'm not getting around very well. The whole walking around, holding your belly in thing. And we're supposed to now pack up our whole family, all our kids.
And your hormones are shifting.
And go to, yeah. Oh,
just
so
all of
tough. And so we were like, okay, we're doing this. We got to pack up. But before we started packing, we gathered in the living room as a family and just prayed and did battle over this. And then we all rushed around and started packing. And before we, started, we were like packed, but we hadn't loaded out into the car yet. And we got another call and they said she is stabilizing, but she's still on the brink. So we're going to have the helicopter on standby at the hospital, but we're going to keep her here and try one more thing that we have to try. So again, this is like almost midnight.
Pray some more.
And we gathered as a family and prayed some more. And we tucked the kids into bed because we didn't, we thought, well, they need to at least get some sleep before we're going to drive to Spokane. And I'll never forget this night. It was one of the most intense spiritual battles that I've ever been a part of, but I really believe there was a battle going on for her life that night. And Johnny and I just united. Oh, one thing we forgot to mention in part one of this little story was I had COVID. Like, I was sick.
What?
I gave birth to a 10-pound, 9-ounce baby.
With COVID.
What?
Sick. Shannon
I
showed
forgot
up
about this.
to the
Yeah, I
birth.
remember this
I
now.
had a fever. She gave me Tylenol first thing. She was like, "Girl, you're taking some Tylenol because you got to get through this." So after the baby, that was the other thing. Like, coming back and forth, I was still recovering, and I was congested. It was just like I was in bad shape. So I have like barely any voice. My voice is groggy, but we knew we needed to sing. We needed to pray. And so with the voice that I had, whatever was left of it, we sang with all of our hearts. And Johnny and I sat out. We probably sang for 2 to 3 hours straight and just battled for her life of our little baby girl. And when we were finally exhausted at like 4 a.m., we fell asleep on the couch. We got a call about 6 o'clock a couple hours later. Baby has stabilized.
Wow.
We're going to keep her here.
Oh,
That's
praise
awesome.
God.
And just, but she was still in critical condition for sure. And the thing is, transferring to Spokane was going to be to put her on life support. Like, this is the end of the road.
Wow.
What was going on with her at that point exactly?
So she was having a high pressure on one side of her heart, and it's way too complicated for me to even explain, but it was like messing with her heart and her lungs. The high pressure creates like not enough pressure to the lungs. And so they weren't getting what they needed. So she was on full support ventilator, like the heaviest duty ventilator. We have pictures, but she was on like 10 medications.
That had to be even extremely hard for you. For the average person, it would be hard enough.
How was Johnny during this part? I mean, you guys sang together, but
Johnny is Johnny. And oh my goodness, God is sovereign and knew that I needed him because Johnny's a rock. He just is steady
Pretty
state.
steady and level-headed.
He is. And he trucks along, and he was phenomenal.
And you not liking hospitals, anti-intervention, anti-medicine, what do you feel like, in a nutshell, God did with you through this?
Oh, goodness. Well, obviously, it's a huge letting go because you don't have a choice. You have to
surrender.
And it was hard, but I do have to say, with all the prayers that were going up for us, it was manageable. If you would have told me when I was pregnant, this is what we were going to have to go through,
You would have run to Canada and hid in the hills.
I would have been sick. I mean, it makes me physically ill to think about this scenario.
Imagine.
But then, it's like God doesn't give you the grace for a trial
Until you're in it.
until you're there.
I just had the same thought. I mean, for those that are listening that don't understand that, it's not just that, in that moment you pray, but there's also this grace that you get. And it's almost like this, how do you define it? It's this ability to go through it. It's almost like seat belts on an airplane, all these people telling you, don't worry, don't panic. I mean, it's really like, but it's an inward thing. And that was probably something that you were talking about when you said just
So
a grace.
you've learned to let go and you've learned to trust.
Oh, I'm cool as a cucumber now, I mean, I've arrived. I have arrived. Just ask Johnny. Just ask my kids.
And for those that don't know, we do have a podcast with the husbands on it, so you can. We'll put a link so you can meet Johnny.
You can meet Johnny. Yes. So still tough. We could do a whole series on what the NICU is like, but just showing up every day to hear the report of her life hanging in the balance. And she was hanging on, but still like on so much medication. I don't even know what it was all for.
At what point did she turn?
So it was about, I'm going to say, I should have had all the specifics, but like about 5-6 days.
Wow.
Was when she really started coming off of things. It was so cool to see the answer to prayer right before our eyes. We just kept envisioning the lines that she was on dropping off one by one, the support that she was on, and then to see it happen before our eyes, to see the miracle like coming to life.
Wow.
Yes.
And we would just go and sit in this dark, quiet room, listening to the machines and just be with her, because that's really all we could do. I still, 5-6 days in, had not been able to hold her because she was on so much support. In fact, I remember, it just makes me cry thinking about it. One of the first times was that I got to really touch her with my hands was a few days in, 3 or 4 days in, and they needed to change her bedding. And she, she's intubated, so they have to be super careful moving somebody. So there were 4 of us. Also, she was so big. People in the NICU are used to preemies, like little tiny children, and they are just all like, this baby's huge. What do we do? So they have to lift her with all this support. And they asked me if I wanted to help, which it's like night and day experience being home and doing everything to care for your baby, and then being in the hospital and
You
feeling
didn't
like
know what to do with yourself.
no, I was like, I can't change her diaper.
Feel
I
useless.
can't, like, I don't, I have to ask permission to touch her. Like, so weird. And so I got to be one of the lifters that helped lift her up while they changed her bedding and checked her tube and everything. And it was one of the most connecting things that had happened at this point, because I got to have my hands on her. And while I was there talking to her, which was, like I said, we were whispering to her. I felt like she didn't even know who we were because we had so little interaction. And the lights were on for one of the first times, so I got to see her. And one of the nurses said, "Oh, she knows Mama's voice." Yeah. And I have a picture of her. And poor little thing broke my heart, but she was so sedated and so groggy because she was on all this medication. But she rolled her little eyes over and looked at me. And looking back on those pictures just makes me cry because, to have someone else verify and say, "Look at her. She knows Mama's voice. She knows where you are. She knows that you're here."
Do you think that's when you started really feeling connected again?
Probably was one of the times. Yeah, it was just like, it was so heartbreaking that to see her so sedated, but it was also like she's trying. She's trying to connect. And the other thing that was so interesting about this experience for me was pumping. Adventures
You've
in
never been a
pumping
pumper
could be also a whole podcast.
Whole other podcast.
But you know, in all the things that we got taken away from what we had hoped for in this birth, I was like tenaciously holding on to breastfeeding. That was also another big question mark because some kiddos with Downs have a really tough time breastfeeding because of the low tone.
Yeah.
They just really have a hard time latching. They may not have the strength for it at first. Most of them can. I do want to say that. But when we first got to the NICU and asked them about that, they were not super positive. They just kind of left it as a big question mark. Like, we'll see, but we're not going to promise you anything. So we were praying about this. I was pumping to get my supply up. She wasn't eating anything at this point, even through the tube. She wasn't ready for it yet because of all the health issues. But
how much weight did she lose?
I think a normal amount, honestly.
She didn't get too low.
And that was another blessing.
She
For some reason,
she
it
had all
just
that
she had
chubbiness to
all
live
that
on.
chubby chunk, and seeing her in the in the incubator and everything with her chubbiness, it just felt better emotionally than seeing our like a tiny baby struggling. It just felt like she was a little beefier.
She was ready to fight.
She was fighting, yes. And so, going back and forth to the hospital with all the pumping gear and, you can only explain it really. Someone can only understand if they've lived it and done it. But man,
It's a full-time job.
it was a full-time job and it was tough. And, but again, it was like grace for the moment because guys, honestly, with all my other babies, I can't pump. Like I have a ton of milk. But I, for whatever reason, I can't get, it's just like it only comes for the baby. And so I was worried, like, I have to do this to keep the milk supply up, but is it going to work? And it was like, it was just the thing. And it came and it worked. And so I think finally, we were seeing the medications drop off. She turned that corner. She finally was off her stuff and just on a little bit of oxygen support. And they said, we're going to wean her off of the oxygen over the next few days. And it was at that point when she was only on the oxygen that we were finally, I think, day 7, able to pick her up and hold her. Wow. I wasn't able to do skin to skin the first time because it was going to be too much logistically, but got to hold her. Look at her. I have pictures of her
like your baby
looking up at me. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Felt like my baby. We'd been fighting for her life at this point. And so, that was a milestone. And then I think the sweetest, moment was when we finally the next day got to do skin to skin. And it just felt like coming full circle.
For the most part, didn't you hold her like that just as much as you absolutely could for days?
Definitely. I mean, we would go home, we'd go to the hospital at night because it was quieter. It was, we got to sleep a little bit during the day and spend a little time with the kids. And then we would go and spend as long as we could. Johnny would go during the morning. So there was almost always someone there with her, but I was going at nights and we couldn't nurse at that point, but I would just go and hold her on me and do as much skin to skin as possible. I was still pumping. We were giving her little swabs of milk in her mouth. But as soon as she started being able to take a feeding tube, she had my milk from the beginning. And
all that good colostrum.
Yes. And glory to God, she has only had breast milk her whole life. Ever.
Wow.
Which is just such a triumph. It was something sweet that got blessed, got gifted to us in the middle of all of this upheaval. And so another moment that I look back on that makes me almost just tear up is, I was holding her and snuggling her. It was late at night. They had told us she's not really strong enough to breastfeed yet. She was off of her oxygen, I think, at this point, but still had the feeding tube. But they said, she's not really strong enough yet. But I was holding her skin to skin, just snuggling, sitting there late at night, and she starts looking around. And
looking for food.
I was like, this is my 4th baby. I know this look. I know these sounds. I know where this is going. And I couldn't help myself. It was just instinctual. And again, you guys thinking about this, like, this is the big moment. Like, this is like, is this baby going to be able to do this or not? She latched right on and started sucking.
Woohoo.
And I was like, and Johnny was sleeping in a chair next to me. And I was like, Johnny, she's nursing. Like, she's nursing. And I was, and you know, we didn't know what to do because they had told us you can't do this. And so he was like, okay, well, I was like, maybe get the nurse. And, you know, and so he goes out and asks and said, you know, can we do this? And she said, well, as long as her stats look good, you know, so she was nursing and it was so kind of start, but that's what they do when they're brand new.
Yeah.
I was elated. Like, it was just amazing. So sweet. And those pictures were so sweet.
I know you sent me a picture. So sweet.
So good. And, you know, at that point, we entered into a whole different phase of our NICU experience, which I'm just going to have to say is like a story for another day and another time. Because the first week when she was fighting for her life was kind of one experience. And then she ended up being there for another 3 weeks. Which was totally a different thing. So we're just going to put a pin on that one and save it for later.
So tell us where things are at now.
Yeah,
so
I wanted to hear
14 months
today.
out. What's going on? What is she doing?
Where is Peanut?
How is she developing?
So I just want to say that a lot of Downs kiddos, even if they are able to breastfeed, they kind of do a combo. A lot of them definitely cannot leave the hospital without some kind of feeding tube support. She was able to leave at, you know, almost 4 weeks by that point, exclusively breastfeeding. She was gaining weight perfectly, beautifully, no oxygen support. Like, we took our baby home. And oh my goodness, this is probably going to be the longest podcast ever, but I have to tell this story. When we found out that we were pregnant with her, we did a treasure hunt for the kids, and they found like a picture of a baby at the end, and that's how we told them. So we ended up transferring to Spokane, and like I said, whole different story. But we're in the NICU in Spokane, and my family, the kids are with my mom in a hotel room. And we were there for 2 days. And they cleared us to go home. We had nothing. Like, we had no baby clothes, no baby anything. We had no idea we were going to be going home so soon. And so we borrowed clothes from the NICU to discharge, and we're driving, like, with our baby in the baby car seat out to go to the hotel and meet our family. And it was like so surreal. Like, our baby's here. We felt like first-time parents.
Yeah.
We were like, what do we do? Like, we have the baby and we're the parents and we're in charge. It was just like so crazy. And in the 10 minutes between the hospital and the hotel, I had this light bulb moment of, we're going to do a treasure hunt.
You didn't.
So I wrote out the treasure hunt pieces really quickly, maybe like 6 or 7 of them. And when we parked, we didn't tell anyone that we were coming.
You didn't even tell your mom?
My family did not know that the baby was discharged. And so this is how fast it happened.
Not even your mom.
No one knew.
Wow.
No one on the planet besides Johnny and I. And so we have the baby, and we park in the hotel. He goes and quick does the treasure hunt, which was so fun because we involved the front desk and the staff and everything. And so the kids go and do this treasure hunt, and I'm sitting there with the baby in the car, and at the end of it, they get to open the door, and there's their baby sister.
What did they do?
My mom was like, millisecond, lightning burst into tears.
Wow.
And the kids were just like in shock. And
I hope you have pictures of that.
we didn't. We should have got a video.
Should have put the video
It was priceless.
There's so many great stories in this story.
It was so fun because then we're walking through the hotel. There's like a line of people. Everyone,
because
all the guests,
involved.
Everyone behind the front desk, and they were like, "Oh, your baby's so adorable." They thought it was the funnest thing ever.
Oh, how fun.
And so, that was such a fun moment. But she was able to come home without any support. She had a follow-up echocardiogram about a month later. It was totally clear. She was cleared for normal activities.
Totally breastfed.
She has been cruising, you guys. And
tell us what milestones she's hit.
She's done everything. She hit all of her milestones on the normal chart, like not even the accommodating for Down syndrome chart,
like
or rolling
smiling,
over,
rolling over, sitting up, crawling kind of thing.
And I have to say that she has just been the biggest balm. Like there's no way to put it into words how much joy she has brought to our family. And like I said, I've taken in like 100 birth stories of kiddos with Down syndrome, and they're all the same. So there's just this quality to this that you can almost not put fingers on, but there is something about these kiddos with this extra chromosome that
it's like an extra joy chromosome.
No, it is. I describe it as like an extra heavenly gene that they got, because they bring this joy that just grabs your soul, and it's just such a delight. And we've had really the craziest year, and you've had a crazy year, and I want to talk about that in a second. But we lost Johnny's mom this year. She passed away, and there have been so many crazy things that have happened with other kids and health issues. And through it all, our sweet little girl has just been the consistent joy. And it's just hard to put into words, but I think in our modern American culture that sometimes is not very pro-kid in general, and definitely is not pro-Down syndrome, because these babies are being aborted.
Yep.
And that's really the sad truth.
Sad.
But the thing is, I think there's just an assault out on them, and nobody knows. Nobody knows until you've experienced it and have this baby, like what a joy and delight. So it's so funny to look back on those moments when she was first born, and all the unknowns and all the just vague idea that this was going to be really bad.
Right.
And now to know that she's been the biggest gift to our family.
So awesome.
And all children are special. Children without Down syndrome, all of our children are gifts. But she just has this special little unique gift that she has been to us. And
she's so adorable.
We couldn't be more thrilled. And
awesome.
I would do it again in a heartbeat. Like, I would not think twice. Like, I would adopt a baby with Down syndrome, because they're just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think if you pulled away all the fear that you went through and just the unknown, it sounds to me like there's so many good moments in this story, including today. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
I think I do want to just concentrate this podcast on you and end it with telling us what's going on in your life in general right now, because you just made a major decision.
Yes, we did.
And how midwifery filters into all of that.
Yes, yeah. So it, from a midwifery standpoint, the birth, just having a baby in general, and then, all the extra things that came along with her birth, it just feels a little bit like whiplash. Because one of the things
it's kind of all been on hold.
Yeah, one of the things I forgot to say in the part 1 of this story was when I was big pregnant, like a couple months away, but looking like I had triplets, is when I took my test, my norm test for, midwifery board exam, basically. Like the biggest test I've ever taken in my life, and finished my midwifery degree, right? Like, yay! But it was this kind of experience, because I finished and we worked so hard to get me there, and then I had a baby, and I've done nothing with midwifery. So definitely on this long break, which is okay. It is what it is. It's the timing that it is, but it definitely was a little bit of a whiplash experience, being in it full time and then taking a break. But we have moved to Idaho.
What?
Which has been,
I had no clue. I did.
Surprise. And it's so hard. I feel like I'm living almost a dual life, because the family side of it, the homeschool side of it, all the things, are wonderful, have lined up so well. And then the midwifery piece of it is just feels like hanging and feels
Can you
sad.
tell us much about that? About like kind of what you've looked into in Idaho and what you found?
With midwifery?
Yeah.
There is a thriving home birth community where we are, so that's good news. I'm still in the process of connecting with midwives there so I can keep up my birth skills. I think the good news is that we are keeping our house here in Kennewick for renting, and we're planning to be here as much as we can during the summer. So I am gonna...
So not actually renting, but Airbnb.
Airbnb, yes.
So that we can take
come
it
in
when you want it.
Yep, we're gonna pop back and...
So I didn't really lose her.
No, it's definitely not the same, but it hasn't been the same really since she was born anyways. So it has been a tough transition really for both of us, I think. But I'm hopeful moving forward for staying connected and keeping the podcast going if we can cajole Shannon into doing that. And but I'm gonna jump in on some births with her and Sierra over the summer.
It's awesome.
I would still love to be able to take clients here in summer times and stay connected here.
I've got all kinds of them in October.
Yeah, so
I don't know what happened. What was 9 months before October?
Don't know.
March, April.
So,
But we have,
January?
I think we have broke records today with this podcast, but we haven't had one in so long except for part one.
that's true.
It's great.
And this was we had a lot to catch
Been
up
waiting
on.
to hear your story.
Yeah. Well,
So-
we sure missed you.
Well, I have missed being in the swing of things. It's just not the same.
I know.
We've been doing this together for almost 6 years all together. And man, it's like you feel like you spend almost every waking moment together when
I
you're
had a
doing
hard time
prenatals
with
and
it.
Yeah.
it is an interesting thing. But like I said, I am really hopeful that we're going to continue collaborating moving forward and keep this good thing going that we
Also
have.
known as Angie nagging Shannon about doing podcasts until
Yes.
she finally gives in.
Yep, that's how it goes.
So, do you have anything you'd like to say before we end this long podcast?
This long podcast. I would just like to say that if you face now or in the future an unexpected outcome, I hope that this story can give you hope that there not only is grace if you receive it and seek it for whatever scenario and situation, but that if you ever do especially have a baby with health issues or special needs or just something that was not in the game plan that you're having trouble connecting with, that it will happen. It will come. And wow, just that they're such a blessing. Children are a gift from the Lord, and they are filled with joy, all of them. And yeah, so that's what I would leave you with. And also that I'm here. I am so blessed to be a part of the birthing community in the Tri-Cities, and I'm going to hang on to that tenaciously until God rips it out of my hands.
So what she's saying is that if you decide to have a baby next June, July, or August, not this June, July, or August, that she will be available.
Yes, that is the Lord willing, the plan.
She can use my office
That's
and
exciting.
do deliveries summer of 24.
And we can squeeze in some podcasts.
Squeeze in some podcasts, and if I would love to be at your birth as an extra coming up here even in this summer. So
yep, she'll be available this summer to
see me
assist
around.
and help with the births.
Yep.
Maybe even give me a couple-day break.
Woohoo!
So we're going to say goodbye for today, but if Angie and my husband have their way, we will be doing lots more podcasts again.
Thank you guys for listening.
See you later.
All right, see ya.
This podcast is intended for educational purposes only. For our full disclosure, please visit us at nc-midwifery.com and our podcast page.